our second panel, and this panel is going to focus on how to personally advocate for yourself in difficult life situations. So I'm going to introduce, starting with Leslie Peters. Leslie has been an advocate for people with Parkinson's since 2015. Her mother-in-law was diagnosed with Parkinson's in 1998, and Leslie and her husband Steve were her caregivers for the last few years of her life. Steve was diagnosed with young onset PD shortly after his mom passed away. Leslie's advocacy work began with the Parkinson's Action Network, attending the Policy Forum in Washington, D.C., and going on to Capitol Hill to discuss policy issues impacting people with Parkinson's. She has continued to advocate on the Hill for the last several years. Leslie also continues to serve as a policy volunteer for Michael J. Fox Foundation, now expanding her work at the state level. She also joined the board at the Parkinson Association of the Rockies. Leslie and Steve lead an active support group and are highly involved in community outreach. Our next panelist is Hal Pottle, who received his diagnosis of Parkinson's disease in 2014. Following a 35-year career in both the corporate world and as a serial entrepreneur, Hal now blends part-time work with numerous exercise classes. Within a month of his diagnosis, Hal had joined a new Parkinson's self-efficacy program. Subsequently engaged by the program as a facilitator, he had the honor to introduce several hundred newly diagnosed PD patients and their spouses to the power of self-efficacy in managing the disease. Hal's spirited discourse, encouraging participation in clinical trials, is lived out by his own participation in over 20 since diagnosis. Hal's dedication to research was recognized by the University of Colorado Movement Disorder Center as a champion partner for research. He was honored to serve as patient representative in support of CU's application to the Parkinson's Foundation, naming CU's Movement Disorder Center as a Parkinson's Center of Excellence. The friendships formed among the Parkinson's community have enriched his life, providing one of the many silver linings of the disease. Hal and his wife, Gail, recently celebrated 30 years of marriage and are parents to 2 adult children. Our next panelist is Tom Polisi, who was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease in 2008. He started volunteering with the Parkinson Association of the Rockies, speaking at support groups and other local events. He was the Assistant State Director of the Parkinson's Action Network in Colorado and remains an active advocate for Michael J. Fox Foundation's Public Policy Committee. Tom helped make Pedaling for Parkinson's indoor cycling centers available throughout the United States, starting in the Denver area and expanding to more than 150 sites across the country. As an ambassador for the Davis Phinney Foundation, he helps guide newly diagnosed patients to adjust to their journey with PD. He and his wife, Jeanette, define how Parkinson's fits into their day, continuing to enjoy their active lifestyle from their home in Arvada, and when they can, with their children, Emily and Mitch. And our final panelist is Tracy McBee, who is a person with Parkinson's, but so much more. She is a wife and a mother of 3 boys. She is on the board of directors for Carbon Valley Parks and Recreation District. She has completed 2 sprint triathlons and enjoys bike rides with families and friends, fishing, and cross-country skiing. She was diagnosed in 2018, but it hasn't stopped her from chasing new passions. Although she doesn't cross-country ski anymore, this past year, Tracy started snowboarding, which to me sounds harder than cross-country skiing, and land paddling, which I need to understand what that is, in the summer. They both sound amazing. She is wanting to leave a mark within the PD community by participating in research groups, helping start up the Young Onset Social Group in Northern Colorado, teaching the Aquafit class for PAR, and being a committee member for this year's E3 conference. So welcome to the panel. So to start with, I want to set the stage, and then we do have some questions that came in from our E3 participants. So the first thing I want to understand from each of you is, why are you passionate about advocacy? Leslie, do you want to start?
Sure. My mother-in-law, Mary, had Parkinson's, and we cared for her prior to her passing away. When I recognized the things in Steve that I had seen with her, the fear that I felt was kind of paralyzing. I finally realized that channeling my energy into something positive would help a lot. While I was actually at an E3 conference, I heard Dr. Benzie Kluger speak about the importance of advocacy work and how important it is to further research and to also secure funding. Shortly after that, I became an advocate and was invited to go to DC and discuss policy issues and how they impact people with Parkinson's. I have been so fortunate to meet so many wonderful people through my advocacy work that I know will continue to be with us throughout our journey. The work that is being done is so important, and I just feel, in my heart that it is so important to get involved, and we desperately need people to get involved. Go ahead, Al.
It's what we have.
Oh, sorry.
We all look and think, why are we here? Why are we having to struggle with this disease in our family or in our own bodies? And there's a reason. There's a purpose for us still. And when we find that purpose and we begin to live out that purpose, whether it's efficacy, whether it's advocacy for ourselves or for a group. So if you work at it on a state level or you work at it on a personal level, it's the same thing, but it's following that sense of purpose and finding reasons why we're here and finding the joy inside of that, because there are very distinct reasons for each and every one of us to be here, and it brings the richness to our lives.
That's be difficult to follow that one, both of those two. But yeah, passionate about advocacy for Parkinson's has been the name of my game since I retired or left work. And that's been 8 years ago. I was diagnosed 16 years ago. And I think the things I first saw when I was diagnosed was you had several organizations out there working to get our attention, to help us with different things. But it was very difficult for me to put together. So that's part of what I intend to do as being an advocate, is help people put it all together. So I think a lot of us struggle with that still, even after all these years. But advocacy really pulls this room together, brings all these folks to this one room to talk about this. And that couldn't be anything more important about having Parkinson's than getting with this group and discovering new ways to help ourselves.
Thank you for being here is my opening statement. And just so that I don't stumble too much, I have written out my answers, so forgive me for reading them. But I think most of you in this room would say you understand where I'm coming from. So a few months after I was diagnosed, I found myself telling my story to a complete stranger. I told her how I was working hard to get back to, quote, my old self, a person who resembled the Energizer Bunny. But she kindly told me that will never happen because this is your new reality, and I could either accept the new me and move forward or just simply exist until I died. That kind of shook me. I decided there and then that I would learn all I could about Parkinson's and move forward, and hopefully motivate others along my journey. I love learning, and this is what has made me passionate about advocacy. In the beginning, I learned everything I could about the landscape of our disease. I used the Every Victory Counts from Davis Finney's foundation. The more I learned, the more questions I had. These questions set me on a path to finding answers. Many times there wasn't an answer, and it was the lack of answers that fueled my passion to advocate. When you find answers and share them with others, you are part of the solution. You are an advocate. Thank you again for being here and being an advocate.
Wonderful, thank you. And it is exciting to see. I think the important thing is people feel that you have to be a superhero to advocate and not just have it be part of your normal life. And I think what these four up here are sharing is that advocacy is a part of your daily life, and it's really how you choose to focus on it. So continuing on with that thought, did acquiring knowledge, and Tracy, you kind of answered this, did acquiring knowledge about Parkinson's and familiarizing yourself with available resources empower you during your journey? And has this understanding enabled you to advocate for yourself more effectively? So Tracy, do you want to start with that one since you've kind of covered it a little bit?
Sure. And I started my statement here by saying absolutely. So a little bit of my story. On my first visit with my movement disorder specialist, he asked if my husband and I would be interested in a book that would help answer our questions and educate us in a practical way about Parkinson's. And we said, yeah, sure. So he gave us a copy of Davis Finney's Every Victory Counts. My husband and I affectionately refer to it as the PD Bible. I recommend it to everyone I meet with Parkinson's. And it doesn't matter if you've been diagnosed for 10 years, 10 months, or 10 days. I'm going to ask you if you are familiar with it and encourage you to get a copy because it is a must-have. It really helps to not only answer questions, but to guide you, especially with the medical panel. It covers a lot of stuff that our medical panel has in it that they talked about. Second, my second visit to my MDS, he suggested I reach out to the Parkinson's Association of the Rockies. And I said, well, what for? What are they going to do for me? And he said, just give them a call, tell them you're newly diagnosed, and they'll take it from there. So let me just say that 5 years after my first call, and my first call was with Carrie, who was sitting in this chair earlier, I'm now sitting in front of you. So not only have I spent time reading about Parkinson's, but I listened to webinars, podcasts. I attended my husband and I attended one of Hal's classes. And I've also started using social media. Platforms like Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok are very powerful tools. And we can share our stories, share our experiences, share a link to a webinar we just watched that really impacted us. Or post a picture from our exercise class. People get curious and they want to ask questions. This is education, and this is bringing awareness. I feel that awareness and education are key to empowerment. Empowerment is the vehicle that drives advocacy. Advocacy will be the foundation for making Parkinson's awareness as common as Alzheimer's.
Thank you, Tracy. And I think there was a question about the name of the book. It's Every Victory Counts, and it's through the Davis Finney Foundation. They've also come out with one for care partners, and you can either contact them to have the book shipped to you, or you can download it from their website. But it is an A to Z, everything you need to know about Parkinson's disease. I do caution people, though, sometimes don't read too far ahead. Just deal with it and go read what you need to learn about, right? Because again, you're not going to have every single symptom that goes in that book. So as you need the resource, it's a fantastic resource, but you may not want to read the book from front to cover. So with that, we'll let Tom go.
Let's see. Acquiring knowledge about Parkinson's and familiarizing myself with the disease was obviously game number one when I was diagnosed. And I had the good fortune of being involved with the Parkinson's Foundation. Back in the day when I was with it, it was the Parkinson's Disease Foundation. They've since merged with the National Parkinson's Foundation to form the ultra group that they are today. And I chaired a committee called the People with Parkinson's Advisory Council, and that was a way for them at the organization to be in touch with the folks like ourselves who are living with Parkinson's and our care partners. And I learned a lot from a lot of different resources. I had a chance to go to the first World Parkinson's Congress. At that organization, we'd have some of the top speakers and the most well-known researchers in all of Parkinson's disease come speak with us and talk to us about the disease and what's going on in the future. So again, I had a very unique opportunity to learn a lot about it. And I never stopped doing that. I've stayed in touch with those folks. They're way senior to me, and their pay grade is much higher than mine in terms of what they know. And it's been a very, very good blessing to help share that with my friends and the people that I associate with in the Parkinson's realm. So it also led me to the Davis Finney Foundation, which is, in my opinion, the gap between the Michael J. Fox Foundation, which is trying to find a cure, and on the other side of the coin, you have people like the Parkinson's Foundation that's just trying to help educate people. And then you have these great organizations like Finney Foundation and Parkinson's Association of the Rockies that are kind of filling in all those blanks, because there's a lot of days between when we're diagnosed and whatever comes as the finale. So And there's been a lot of days. I've been doing this for 16 years, so.
I think education was key for me. I was so fortunate to get involved with a program that is now a part of Davis Finney Foundation, which is a self-efficacy program that I had a chance to lead. And it's very, it's wonderful to see so many of friends who've gone through the program here in the audience. And it's been a real honor to have a chance to facilitate that program. For myself, once I began to get educated and began to learn some things, I started looking at, it's just my nature. I started looking for, okay, how does this really work? How do we get in and around with all of the resources and get what we need? And that was my big question, because I've always been one of those guys where people look at you and go, you can't do that. And I'm like, oh yeah, you can. You just have to figure out how to get around it. And so to me, it's always been almost like a game my whole life with everything. I just love people when they look at me and they just go, you can't do that. And I'm like, well, we'll see about that. So I think what that led for me with Parkinson's was to learn enough to get out and start doing the things that were meaningful. Start getting out and exercising on a really consistent basis, and really taking time to learn and continue to see what's the cutting edge. What's going on with, we're seeing so many things happening with discoveries for longevity and other types of things. So how does that apply to Parkinson's, and how does that apply to my life? And it doesn't stop. It's an adventure. It keeps going on. Like this morning when I couldn't get on.
When Steve was officially diagnosed with Parkinson's, I think I did what most people do. I searched the internet for cures. There I found everything from the disease is fatal to take this and you'll be cured overnight. I was lucky to connect with PAR early on, and they were able to guide me to more reliable resources. I've learned so much through my advocacy work, and it's given me access to see, as Tom said, some world-renowned physicians, and to kind of be a fly on the wall during some of those conferences. Parkinson's, everything that I have learned has definitely helped me to be a better advocate for my husband, and it's also helped me feel like I'm taking control of what can be an uncontrollable situation.
All right, thank you. And this next question, I think is more for Tom and Hal, but if you, Tracy or Leslie, if you want to jump in, feel free. Do you participate in research, and how we know the answer to that, but how did you get started with that, and what do you recommend for someone wanting to get involved with research?
I got voted to start early, or start first. Yeah, I do participate in clinical trials and research, and I did right off the bat. I was in a study where they tested, what the heck was the name of that stuff? Sodium philobutyrate or something like that. And that was a rather interesting experience for me. It kind of got a little bit out of control. I had some medical problems that arose with that. So that's the one realm of clinical trials that a lot of people think about. There's a whole bunch of other clinical things and trials that you can do to help researchers. There's online interviews. There's in-person interviews. There's helping students learn about Parkinson's disease that are majoring in, of all things, doctorate degrees in physical therapy. That's at Regis University. Every year I participate there as a guinea pig, and the group of students collectively gather around and they diagnose me with something, or they find something that's going to help me, some therapy, and they teach me how to do it, even though I already know how to do it. Sometimes I have to tell them, no, you got to do it this way, and that helps them learn. That's the great part about clinical trials. They're not just, we're going to cut your finger off and see what happens. There's way more to it than that. There's non-evasive stuff that's really interesting. It's fun, and you learn a lot, and you get to participate in the growth of these folks that are someday going to cure us all. I tell them no pressure.
Well, interestingly, Tom, you and I started on the exact same trial. Yeah, I was part of the phenylbutyrate trial as well. I'm on number 22 right now, so I've done a few of these, and it wasn't that I set out a course. It just I did the first one, and all I had to do was get off I had a little startup medication that my neurologist recommended, and so we had tried it. I wasn't getting anything out of it, so I went off the meds and started doing trials, and I think it was 4.5, 5 years in before I started taking medication, because I was just doing exercise and doing the trials and going from one to the next to the next to the next. But as you were saying, Tom, there's a wide variety of trials, and the point that I try to make when I'm talking to people about clinical trials is, you read all of these different articles, and there's this amazing discovery over here, and they've done some just remarkable things with stem cells recently that are unbelievably exciting. But here's the thing that many of us will sit back and will think, well, that's not really for me to be involved in it. And I just point out, I said, you know what? We're on a one-lane road. One lane. And that's the road of clinical trials. And there is not going to be a cure or something dramatically that's going to change the face of this, except coming down this road with clinical trials. And so you can all get involved at some level, and plus the education you get from the inside of being part of the results that we're all looking for, being part of the plan. It is remarkable how much that changes your own self-efficacy and how you feel about yourself, because you're part of the cure. So I can't recommend it highly enough. It will change your life in a lot of exciting ways, and maybe change all of our lives. So.
Okay. All right, thank you. So we had a participant ask on the registration form, what do I do if my family and friends are having a difficult time coping with my diagnosis? Tracy, do you want to start that one?
Sure. So I'm really blessed that my family, friends, and my employer are all very supportive, but that doesn't help the folks in this room who are asking that question or have that concern. So I've put a lot of thought into this, several weeks, in fact, as to how I might be able to address this question. And here's what I came up with. The first thing is to accept your diagnosis. I know that can be difficult, but it will help to show your loved ones that even though you struggle with symptoms, you accept it, and just try to be positive. A couple of quick examples. My first D3 conference, I met a young woman in her mid-30s who had come with her mom and her sister. Now, the person with Parkinson's and the sister, they were okay with the diagnosis. They had accepted it, but the mom had not. She was clearly worried for her daughter, and her mindset was, but my daughter's in her 30s, and this is an old people disease. However, by the end of the conference, she felt a whole lot better about it because she interacted with people and heard their stories, and it gave her some hope. Another example that I had is of a woman that I met whose husband has Parkinson's and was still working full-time. We were talking. I still work full-time as well. And we found out that we basically have desk jobs, and we're on the computer all day. And the wife asked me, well, do you have problems operating the mouse? And I said, well, no. And she was like, really? And I said, well, that's because I no longer use my Parkinson's hand on being on the computer. I trained myself to use my other hand. That outside of the box thinking gave her a paradigm shift, and that paradigm shift is what can help people or help change people's minds. The next thing I would say is, and we've talked about this a lot, I'll just touch quickly on it, and that's educate yourself about Parkinson's. We've talked a lot about it. And you don't have to learn the big words like substantia nigra or dopamine agonist or anticholinergic or whatever, right? You don't have to, I don't even know what those things mean. I copied them off the website. Okay, but if you understand the basics, right, it will help you to answer their questions, and answering those questions is what might help lead them to better accept it. We've talked about having your family get involved with your care team, attending seminars like this, etc. The last one I think I would talk about is open communication. And the medical panel touched on this, and I'm going to support what they said, and that is, do not be afraid to have the difficult conversation with your family. If you have an incontinence problem and you have to ask your husband to go buy poise pads for you, that's okay. Okay, don't be embarrassed about it. My husband, 99% of the time, he says, hey, honey, you want to go to dinner? And I'll say, sure. But don't ask me to choose where we're going, because right now my executive function is not working, and I can't make that choice. So just don't be afraid to have that conversation with him.
Thank you. And Leslie?
I think my advice for people with Parkinson's and for their families is to get support. When you're with people that are going through the same things that you are, it can help immeasurably. Encourage your family to educate themselves as much as possible. Even bringing your family to the E3 conference is a good chance for them to meet other caregivers and other care partners, and it also helps them to learn about Parkinson's in a positive environment.
All right. Thank you. Yeah, do you want to add something, Tom? Of course.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that if you don't mind. Advocacy goes way beyond just talking to other people with Parkinson's or the government or pharmaceutical companies. It goes to your family as well. For the longest time, my brother would call me and he'd say, so are you getting better? I'm like, dude, no. So, and advocacy goes into the organizations themselves. Much of the time that I was with the Parkinson's Foundation, it was spent helping them understand what they could do better. And that was a really hard pill for them to swallow, because they had first discovered and invented this thing called the Trial Finder, but they didn't sponsor trials. That was the Fox Foundation's domain. So we got to work on the powers that be there, and we eventually convinced them they should just give Fox the Trial Finder, because that's in their business line. It wasn't in our business line. So there's advocating that goes to that level as well. So we were advocating what should go on. That's what they brought us in for. What should they be doing? And that was one of the key things that they adopted when I was serving on that board.
Perfect, thank you. And I'm going to put a plug in for Carrie Friedman here as well, but I have heard Carrie with people who have been newly diagnosed and their families are having a very difficult time with how do you explain this to the family and how do you get the help that you need from your family. And I've heard Carrie on calls with 10 family members. So know that that option is always there to engage a social worker or a therapist to help you also communicate with your family about what you're going through and what you need, especially. So I'd like to add that in as well. We have another participant question, and this one I think is great for all four of you. Even though I attend social activities, I still feel alone. How do you combat loneliness, isolation, apathy, and depression, a lot of things that come with a Parkinson's diagnosis? Hal, do you want to start?
Sure. I looked through this list, and you're talking about loneliness and isolation and apathy and depression, and that was me this morning. We're all there. We're all there. We're all experiencing it. We're all being challenged by it. I have my challenges. I don't do a lot of Parkinson's things because for me, I need to exercise at a higher level so that I feel good about myself. We're all struggling, and the thing is just to take a step. It's the simple thing of calling a friend and saying, hey, let's go for a walk. And blessedly, I have a friend in the neighborhood who does that, and we go back and forth. But it's doing a new activity. It's taking control of what you can control. It goes back to self-efficacy all over again, but it's doing the things that you can do to take care of yourself.
All right, thank you. Tracy?
I love what you said. Try new things. Paddleboarding, Google it. This crazy woman's trying it. But you know what, I want to start by saying thank you to whoever asked this question, because it was very brave of you to ask this. I think this is a question that a lot of us have. Well, no, it's not a question we have, it's a reality that we have, okay? And I suffer from fatigue and apathy. So right now, my Parkinson's symptoms are not something that you can look at. I mean, I get this a lot. You don't look like you have Parkinson's. But trust me, I have Parkinson's. And with, my husband's up here shaking his head. And I'm actually going to go off my script here just a little bit for a second. I'm the kind of person who, I've always been the Energizer Bunny, or I've been like Tigger, full of energy, bounce, 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 bounce. And now I suffer from apathy and fatigue. I've gone from being Tigger to being Eeyore. And it's hardest for me because the thing that triggers this is a temperature regulation symptom. Mine is heat. And we live in sunny, hot summer Colorado. And when I say temperature regulation, I can't be in the heat. Just yesterday, I had a checkup with my MDS, and we were talking about it. This is what my world looks like. It's so bad that I just got back from 4 weeks in Alaska, where it's 55 degrees, and I felt like I was in heaven because I went on a 5-mile hike because I could. Talking to my MDS yesterday, he actually told me that of all the people he's ever come across, all his patients, etc., in his experience, when it comes to temperature regulation, I am worst case scenario that he has ever seen. So how do you combat this? Just really quickly, somebody already said, join a group, find a friend, right? Find somebody. Tell that friend to bug you. Hey, would you mind texting me the night before? And if you don't show up at boxing class, give the instructor permission to call you and say, hey, we missed you. Don't be afraid to step outside of your comfort zone. Just try something new. Just try it. One thing that I enjoy doing, and I enjoy seeing other people do, and I think all the folks up here have done this, and that is become a mentor. Whether you're struggling or not, find somebody, find a new friend, and offer to help them. Because if anything, helping other people naturally will get you out of a funk. It really will. It's giving service to others. And the last thing I'm going to say is, don't be afraid to check in with your care team. A very quick example. Last summer, I was struggling with the heat and the apathy and insomnia on top of it. I was trying very hard to get up early in the morning to do bike rides before it got hot. Now, you have to understand, when I say hot, I'm talking 70 degrees. It is too hot for me to exercise. And one morning, I just said, you know what? Screw this. I'm going for a ride. I went for the ride. I got about 3 blocks from my house. It was 73 degrees, and I literally passed out and crashed my bike from heat exhaustion. My loving husband looked at me and said, okay, honey, are you going to call the doctor now? And I did. And we did some tweaks to the meds. It helped. But anyway, so just get out there.
Tom?
Yeah, I found myself talking myself out of doing things for the longest time. And that was not me at all. I was never like that. And I think it was a couple Christmases ago, it was right around Christmas, I remember that. I woke up in the morning thinking to myself, instead of talking myself out of the things that I don't want to do today, I'm worried about doing, or because I'd rather just stay here and be a hermit, I challenged myself to talk myself into doing the things that I want to do, or to talk myself into talking myself out of doing something. So if you follow all that logic, it's worked really well. And it's kind of fun to have that conversation with yourself. I think I found it to be quite humorous. And there's a lot of things like I heard both of you say that it's difficult to come up here and sit down in front of all of that bright light. I can't see you all, and most of you are naked too, so that helps as well. But it just takes a little bit of time, a little bit of effort to talk myself into doing the things that I may not otherwise do. So that's, to me, the way I combat loneliness and apathy and that type of thing. And I've had this conversation with a lot of my friends that have Parkinson's, and I challenge them to do the same thing, and I'll challenge you to do it as well.
Thank you. All right, Leslie.
So apathy and loneliness are something that everyone living with Parkinson's experience. I think it can really help to go to counseling and talk one-on-one with a professional that can listen to your biggest fears and provide coping skills that can help you during darker times. When Steve is having a hard time with apathy, I do everything that I can to help motivate him. I know that he works as hard as he can because he wants to stay well for his family, and I admire that, and I'm also very grateful. Finding someone that can help keep you motivated and that can also hold you accountable when necessary can be very beneficial.
All right, perfect. And let's see. One of the questions we had is, what do you recommend for someone who is interested in wanting to get involved in advocacy, either personally, through organizations, or politically? Who wants to take that one first? Go ahead, Tom.
This way I'll get done before the rest of them. Okay. And I found it kind of interesting that both my esteemed colleagues here, the two women, wrote their questions out so nicely, and you're so much better prepared, and I feel like an idiot. Fortunately, Hal's here, and we're going to be idiots together. And by the way, you never call me to go for a walk anymore. What the hell? So, what do I recommend for people? I get that question all the time from new ambassadors at the Finney Foundation and elsewhere. I just say, look, the basic way to start advocacy, I think, is raise some money, do some fundraising stuff. That's kind of fun. It's kind of easy. I realize that not everyone does that. And the question or the statement I always get is that's not for me. And I understand that. It may not be for everybody. But all of my friends that always want to help me, they can't find the cure. They can't tell me what kind of medication to take. They can't do this. They can't do that. That's all for the doctors and the researchers. But they can give me $1. And I take all the friends I have. That's a lot of bucks. And I channel that into the Finney Foundation. I've made major donations through, it used to be the old Shake, Rattle, and Stroll walk, now the Vitality Walk, and support things like that. It's fun. We'd raise some money with our friends and family, and that's how they help me. That's how they help all of us. So again, if you're looking for a way to get started, that's easy. Have a cakewalk, whatever you want to do. Join the Girl Scouts. They have great stuff that they can do there for you, and then see where that takes you.
Perfect.
I would just say, look at your gifts. Look at the things that you've been gifted with, and how can you use those? Because those are the things that really satisfy it to the heart level. And when you get involved and you use your gifts and things are synergistically working together, it's a wonderful boost. So that'd be my input.
To anyone interested in getting involved with advocacy, I would say figure out what you're passionate about, whether it's research, living better with Parkinson's, or getting involved politically to try to secure funding and to further policies impacting people with Parkinson's. Personally, talking with our state representatives over the years has helped me to find my voice. I am very comfortable telling our story, and I hope, that in doing so, it will also help others.
Well, I think there's a theme here because we're all saying the same thing, and I hope you all are picking up on that. I would say begin with what you're passionate about, what you're talented with, etc., and then just start talking to people. That's our first speaker, Julia. That's what she said. Just start talking to people. The conversation can be in person. It can be through email, on Facebook, at an exercise class, a support group. It doesn't matter. Just start a conversation. And here's kind of what my story looks like. I am an aquafit instructor. I've been doing it for almost 20 years. I'm very passionate about exercise and especially working out in the water. So about this time last year, I got an email from PAR that just simply said, hey, that new aqua class that we're going to start, we've had to put it on hold because we lost our instructor. So I immediately picked up the phone, called and said, hey, can I talk to this lady? Her name was Delisa. She's our boxing instructor we just had here. And I simply offered my services and helped her launch an aquafit class. And then from there, and I got to share my knowledge. From there, I learned that PAR was looking for people for the planning committee for today's event. And at first I thought to myself, oh, yeah, that sounds kind of cool. And then I thought, I'm really kind of busy. But then I found out that the theme was advocacy, and I signed up right away because I'm passionate about advocacy. This led me to meeting Christy Martin, which hopefully many of you know or have had an opportunity to meet. And I've helped Christy, and Christy and I have worked together, and we've got some things going in northern Colorado. In particular, the Northern Colorado Young Onset Meetup Group, which I just want to give a plug for because I see some of my fellow meetup group people here, and it's great to see you. So again, I say just start with what you're passionate about and talk to people. I don't think anybody wakes up one morning and says, I think I'll be an advocate today. I don't think that's the way it works. And I think that's what we've heard up here. But we start with what we're passionate about, we look for a need, and we help to fill that need. And my final statement would be this, is that I personally, as a person with Parkinson's, have found that advocating has been incredibly therapeutic for me. It has helped me to stay motivated and to help me get past some of those hard apathy days. So that's another thing you might look at is just helps therapy as a way to help you make yourself feel good about helping others.
All right, thank you. I would really like to thank this panel because it is not easy to get up here in front of a lot of people and talk about your experience, and I really appreciate your honesty, sometimes brutal honesty, which is great. And I know that PAR has a lot of people in the Parkinson's community who are willing to mentor, to talk to people who are having issues or newly diagnosed, and we are always happy to connect you with anybody if you need to have those conversations. So thank you very much to our panel.